Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the start of our Menopause Program. A big welcome to newbies who have just recently joined the Lean and Nourish Club. We welcome you. We're really glad that you're involved in our menopausal program. And just to let everyone know that these are all recorded, we will be then uploading them to your members area. So for those of you who perhaps haven't found the members area, when you signed up either for the Lean and Nourish Club or the Menopause Program, you would have had to create an account, and the login details would be those that you used when you signed up. So that would be your email and a password, and you can change your password as well. And if you go into the members area, then you will find a selection of pages. One is meal plans. There is also a section on recipes. Many of those are solely just for people of the Lean and Nourish Club, so they're not available to the public. And also you will see a whole range of blogs as well. Again, some of those are very much just for the Lean and Nourish Club as well. So it will be under meal plans. Under the webinars, we will upload all these menopause webinars as well. And if you have any questions on anything that we talk about, because we will be going quite deep into what really goes on with our hormones and our health, and you might want to watch these again, then you can either email me direct or post on the Facebook page. And we really encourage you to interact during this webinar. You can ask questions. Chris is here. He will be reading out some of the questions at the end of the webinar. And again, if you've got any questions at any other time, just use the Facebook page. We're a great supportive group, and we're here to help and encourage you all. So what I want to do today is just do a quick overview of the program and just menopause and what's really going on. And then in the next few webinars coming up, you will see from the titles, they really dig a lot deeper into certain key areas that affect all women who go through this natural transition. And this is a natural transition, it's inevitable. For some women, they will go through it prematurely for various health reasons or for other reasons. And no matter where you are, whether you are 30s, 40s, or going post-menopause, this program will help you. The program, the meal plan, the nutrition plan, is incredibly healthy, it's incredibly nourishing. So even if you are not in this perimenopause, menopause bracket, you can still follow the plan. And I know some of you have already said that that's exactly what you're doing. I've also had a couple of questions about, can my husband, family follow it? Yes, they absolutely can. You may want to tweak the portion sizes, and if they are not wanting to lose weight the first week, which is very low carbs, they may wish to add a few more carbs. But there's no reason why you can't cook the same food for the whole family. I don't want you to be creating lots and lots of different meals and causing you to stress out over it. So today I'm just going to go through the program, and then we're going to look at estrogen in particular and what happens as it starts to decline. And then we're going to look at some practical solutions, particularly for some of the common symptoms like hot flushes as well, which is one of those major concerns that a lot of people have. Welcome everyone if you're just joining us. We're just getting started, so welcome. Post any questions, remember, using the Facebook page, and we can answer you at the end. So just to recap, it's a 4-week program. There are webinars every Sunday at 2 o'clock. They are recorded. You should have received the 4-week program and the nutrition plan. That's in the members area as well for those of you who have been in the Lean and Nourish Club for quite a while. And you'll notice as you read through the plan, there are 3 distinct phases of the plan. The first section is called Reset. That will be the first week that we are following from Monday. I know some people might be starting it actually this weekend, but a lot of people are starting it on Monday. And that very much is designed to be low carbohydrate to help with what we call insulin resistance, which is a lot more prevalent as estrogen declines. And we will be digging into why that happens and what we can do about it in the webinars to come, particularly next week's webinar. We will then move on to what we call the transform phase, which is the larger part of the plan, and then the sort of maintenance phase. So what happens after that as well. Welcome everyone. I know some of you are still just logging in. It's great to have you with us. So let's get started, and I make no apologies for going into details on some of the ins and outs of hormones, because you are all here to learn about what's happening to your bodies, and more importantly, what we can do to really optimize our health and thrive through this transition. So we have various stages, and there are different responses from different types of estrogen. Remember, estrogen is not just one type of compound. There are lots of different types. When we are premenopausal, we have the dominant circulating estrogen, which is normally called 17-beta estradiol. Now, you'll see sometimes I'll have an E at the front rather than an O. Sometimes I'm using research from America and they don't stick their O on. But it's 17-beta estradiol, E2. That is the most dominating estrogen throughout a lot of our reproductive years. And that's because it's produced by the ovaries. Now, our hormones do generally have a 28-day cycle. We are lunar beings, whether we like it or not. We have a clear rhythm. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that is because, unfortunately, during the menopausal transition, not only does the cycle change, but also it impacts our circadian rhythm. And that's why our sleep gets really quite badly affected. And we'll go into that in one of the webinars. Then we have this menopausal transition. Now, this can last years. A lot of people think, oh, it's just a couple of years. No, it's not. It can be 10 years before you actually stop your periods. And during this time, hormone production is really quite erratic. And sometimes you'll find you have a very long cycle. Sometimes you'll have a short cycle. Sometimes it will be heavy. Sometimes it will be light. And you may start getting symptoms. Now, that could be the very typical sort of hot flushes, but it could be things like your sleep's not as great, your energy's going down, you're starting to notice the mid-life sort of weight gain. You might find your body's changing, you might find your libido's going, you might find sex is very painful. All of these things can be happening years before you hit the menopause. And then when we hit menopause, which is on average around your 50s, so 50, 51 is on average, but we are all different. That's when your periods stop. And officially, menopause is when you've had 1 year of no menstruation at all. And now we have a situation where estradiol, that E2 that I mentioned, is no longer being produced by the ovaries because the ovaries are shutting down. So it's now only synthesized in other areas, and it's synthesized in a lot less volume. So breast, brain, muscles, bone, and your fat tissue. And also it acts a lot more locally, which means the effects of declining estrogen are found and felt all over our body, i.e. this is a systemic condition that is natural, but it affects every single body organ, every single organ. So it's not just about a lack of periods. And that's one thing I really want to stress, because it affects everything from our mental health to our physical health. We have receptors for estrogen in particular and progesterone, but particularly estrogen in nearly every single organ of our body, and that includes our brain. And that is why often we may struggle with memory, with mood, with brain fog. It is natural, doesn't mean we have to put up with it, but it is a natural situation that happens because suddenly those receptors in our brain don't have the estrogen and they cannot respond to it in the same way. And that's why I've got a whole webinar on this, because it's so important, and it can be really quite scary when you start, forgetting things, or you have brain fog, or you can't concentrate, or your motivation goes down. It also affects things like our mitochondria. Now, our mitochondria are our energy powerhouses in our cells. So is it any surprise that we feel fatigued? So this is why I really want to dig deep on these webinars, because there are certain things we can do, and what may help one individual may be very different from another. So I put this on Instagram. It got a few funny responses, but this is how widely the menopause can affect us. Every single organ can be affected. And different people will be affected in different ways, and we're going to try and cover many of these. But the first thing I want to lay down, and the reason I'm doing this is because I will be referring to this in some of the other webinars, and that is, as well as the fact that we have different types of estrogen, we also have different types of receptors on our cells that respond to this estrogen. So we have what's called estrogen alpha receptors, estrogen beta receptors, and membrane receptors. Now, two of the dominant ones are alpha and beta. You don't need to remember this, but the reason I'm flagging it up now is because these receptors are in different organs. And so when things decline, we want to be able to be supporting these receptors in different organs. So alpha receptors are often associated with our metabolism. So our ability to lose weight or maintain a healthy weight, our ability to have energy. They also influence some of our mood because they are present in our brain. The estrogen beta, these are in a whole range of different organs, including our gut. So I don't know, for those of you women who have already gone through the menopause or are, in your 50s and experiencing a lot of symptoms, have you noticed that your bowel movements have changed? Because for a lot of women, they struggle a lot more with constipation. And that is because estrogen receptors are in our gut and they influence our motility. So you can see how widely changes in estrogen in particular affect us. Now, the membrane receptors, they are a new area that's being researched, and they have quite a rapid effect on our body and our cells. And between those different receptors, they regulate the level of estrogen that we can utilize. So it makes sense that we want these receptors to be working well. So our alpha receptors are very important when it comes to our weight. And you may have noticed that as you're moving into the menopause, it's harder, much harder to keep the weight that you had previously. But also they regulate our nervous system. And that's important because how we respond to stress, anxiety, depression, these are also influenced by these receptors as well. And then the beta ones are very much involved in our cognition. So when we have the webinar on brain health and memory, I'll be referring a lot to these and how we can support these to maximize the benefits that we get from the estrogen that we still have. Because we still have estrogen when we're menopausal. It's just we have a slightly different combination of types, and it is less. So as I mentioned, estradiol is that predominant one during our reproductive years. If you're pregnant, you will have more of the estradiol. And then during menopause, we have more estrogen. And we'll talk about how these are produced in a later webinar. But the key point is that they will decline, and in particular, estradiol declines. And estradiol is very much involved in a lot of health benefits like our metabolism, our energy, our brain, and our weight. So one of the first things that I get asked is, I eat healthily, I exercise, but I've noticed that I'm gaining weight, and I gain weight particularly around my tummy. I'm also low in energy, and I used to be really energized, and I'm not anymore. And the reason is that estrogen is very much involved with our survival. It was one of the original hormones to not only help us reproduce, obviously, but control our metabolism, our energy. It was a survival hormone. That's what it was for. And so as a result, it's actually used in glucose metabolism and utilization. And do you remember I said that our first week is very much a reset week? And that is because as estrogen declines, it is more likely we can have a problem with utilizing insulin. Insulin is produced by our pancreas to help shunt the blood glucose after we've eaten food into our cells and burn it for energy. Now, without enough estrogen, it is much harder for our cells to utilize that energy because estrogen is involved in transporting that glucose. It's involved with turning that sugar into energy. It's involved with insulin health. So is it no surprise then that without enough estrogen, energy and weight gain are often impacted? And also the distribution of fat changes. So this is a typical diagram of where most of the fat is in male and women. So typically, women will often carry more weight around their breasts, their butt, and their hips. That starts to change as estrogen declines. So what you'll often find is you don't really have a backside anymore, and it seems to shunt its way to your tummy. So we have an increase in abdominal fat, and we also find that harder to shift as well. So estrogen very much is involved in directing where fat is distributed. So if anything, we start resembling a more male shape. And of course, men don't have as much estrogen as us. So that's why that changes. But I wonder whether you've also noticed a change in your appetite. Because estrogen, yes, is involved in appetite. And the reason is that obviously it was a hormone for survival. So we needed to fuel ourselves so we could reproduce. Well, in the hypothalamus, which is an area in our brain, and in fact, I think it's in February, might be in March, we have a whole webinar about how we can tap into nutrients that can support cravings and appetite. Well, it's the hypothalamus in our brain, that section in our brain which controls appetite. It controls how much we expend in terms of energy and keeping our body weight at a sort of balanced level. So of course, without the estrogen, and remember those estrogen alpha receptors need to be functioning well, it's harder to control our appetite. So again, estrogen can affect even appetite and cravings. And it's very much involved in fatigue. And that's because those beta receptors are fundamentally important in our mitochondria, which we all have. They decline as we get older. So even in men, they decline. But it influences the functioning of those energy powerhouses. So it's no surprise then that energy declines as estrogen declines. And that also means because we're not burning as much, we're more prone to put on weight as well. In fact, menopausal women are 3 times more likely to gain weight than perimenopausal or premenopausal women. And that's partly due to the estrogen levels. There's also a lot of research now about endocrine disruptors, which are found in things like plastics, cans, packaging, the water, pesticides, you name it. We're doing a hell of a lot of research now in endocrine disruptions. And also, what also happens is there is a decrease in something called adiponectin. And we'll talk about this next week. But this is a hormone that's made by fat tissue, useful for burning. Unfortunately, even though we might feel we've got more fat, the levels of adiponectin decline. So again, that's another issue. Now, there are ways we can support this, and that's what we'll talk about next week. But diet really plays a role in all of this, and for a number of reasons. When we do the Lean and Nourish 21-day plan, I very much talk about calories, which are absolutely important, as are macros. But food is more than just calories and macronutrients. It provides information to the body and it affects gene expression. And I know some of you have done your genetic SNPs, and I've obviously helped you with some of that. But the type of foods that we choose can switch on or off certain receptors and enzymes that control many body processes. And specific nutrients can impact those cell receptors, just like hormones can. And that's one area we're going to be talking about. They can also impact our gut microbiome. And one of the webinars, don't want to sound too lectury, one of the webinars really talks about our circadian rhythm. And we've got a whole webinar in later on as well on circadian rhythm, separate to the menopausal program. But our gut microbiome have their own circadian rhythm. And if they're disrupted, that will affect our sleep. So the food choices we make impact our gene expression and they impact our microbiome as well. So we need to choose food properly. And that's why you'll see the download that you've got not only has the recipes, but there is quite a lot of information about why I'm choosing certain foods. And you'll see that, we're encouraging you where possible to try and get organic or wild, caught or grass-fed. We try and make sure there's plenty of fibre because we want the starchy veg to feed the microbiome. We want probiotic food in there, whether that's sauerkraut, yogurt, kimchi, whatever. And we want lots of cruciferous vegetables. We'll go into the reasons why, but they support detox. And we need to make sure that we're detoxifying properly our hormones, particularly at this time. And we also encourage a lot of colour, phytonutrients, because they're going to be helping us switch on certain genes and helping us with various inflammatory markers which can adversely affect things like receptors and brain health and so on. Exercise is important, and I know we're in lockdown for a lot of you. I know we've got people from all over the world, but for a lot of people, you are in lockdown, and it does make it much, much harder to exercise. But exercise almost becomes more important as we age. It's important for our metabolic health, insulin sensitivity. It's important for stress relief, bone health, and that's one of the things we'll talk about next week, and muscle mass. The more muscle we have, the more metabolically active there is, and the more we're likely to maintain a healthy weight. So ideally, I encourage you to try some body weight exercises. I know a lot of you don't have the luxury of having free weights, but something that helps with muscle mass and bone health, as well as the cardio work. And we're still allowed to go out for our walks. We can still exercise in home. And particularly during this time, meditation, Pilates, yoga, all of these things are really important for managing our stress, because adrenal health becomes really important around our menopause all years, really important. And also that will also help with things like our sleep patterns and circadian rhythm as well. And our circadian rhythm is so important for metabolic health. So if we want to lose weight, we need to have quality sleep. And estrogen impacts our circadian rhythm big time. And there are three main ways that have been shown to help correct our circadian rhythm and our clock. Hormone therapy, which I'm not really going to be going into because that is a medical matter. I will mention it, but we do have a couple of functional doctors in the group as well, who may well also be able to give us some help with that. And I have some links to papers that I can list for you as well. But lifestyle and diet and correcting the clock is really important. Um, Estrogen is very much involved with what's called our master clock, and that is very much controlling our 24-hour sleep wake cycle. That happens in the hypothalamus, and we need estrogen to do that. So, estrogen maintains the timing of all our clocks. Every organ in our body has clocks. And that means that there are certain times of the day that different organs are more active than others. So think of our master clock as our conductor of the orchestra. And when that master clock is working well, it keeps all our other organs in tune with the right amount of function, and everything's working great. We have good quality sleep, we are restored. However, when estrogen declines, that master clock shifts. And unfortunately, we almost need to reset it every day, because without the estrogen to help, it can often drift. And one of the best things you can do is first thing in the morning, get yourself out to some sort of sunlight. I know it's dark at the moment, but the more sunlight you can give your body first thing in the morning, that helps to reset your clock. So healthy levels of estrogen support your circadian rhythm. And what happens, unfortunately, is that as the estrogen levels decline, often we are putting a lot more pressure on our adrenal glands, because they are also able to produce some estrogen. And unfortunately, if we are very stressed, it can lead to not only high cortisol, and that could be high cortisol at the wrong periods of time, so often in the evening, so we're wired but tired, and we have lower estrogen levels. So often with women, our sleep pattern can our circadian rhythm almost flips a bit. So we often find that when we wake in the morning, we're really tired, and that's because we're not producing enough cortisol, because cortisol should be high in the morning, it should be low at night. And often it rises in the evening, and then we're a little bit wired and we can't sleep. So for some of you, sleep may be one of your priorities. We have a sleep handout. If you go to the members area, if you go to the blogs on sleep, you can access our sleep handout. It may also be actually under the downloads in the Facebook page as well. But what I would recommend is you try and go to bed between 10 and 11 at night. Some people need to go to bed earlier, particularly if they're getting up very early. 3 hours before bed, do not exercise. Minimize your computer screens or your electronic screens and start dimming the bright lights. We've had a whole webinar on sleep, and again, you can access that under the webinars in your members area. An hour before bed, do some deep breathing exercises, relaxation exercises, because that taps into the part of your nervous system that will calm you down. Have an Epsom salt bath. Have some calming teas like valerian, chamomile. Have some cherry active juice hot. Take some magnesium glycinate. And then try and sleep in a cool, very dark and very quiet room. And then when you wake up in the morning, bright exposure straight away, to try and reset that clock. But we do have other resources on the members area as well. And eating can also reset the clock. And that's why you'll see in the nutrition plan, I've mentioned that we recommend time restricted eating. So ideally, try and stop eating about 7 o'clock in the evening and go at least 12 to 14 hours of no food. Timed eating is one of the best things we can do to reset our clock and help our circadian rhythm. It's almost like a backdoor way to reset your clock. And that will help with our microbiome, It helps with liver function. It helps with blood glucose function. So for those of you very much into brain health and functional medicine, you'll know of Dr. Dale Bredston, who has done a lot of research on Alzheimer's. He's a massive fan of fasting and time-restricted eating to help with insulin resistance, to help with liver function, to help with digestion function. Exactly the same thing for us. So we need to help reset our bodies. And that's why I also don't encourage you to be snacking all the time. Try and stick to regular meals at set times. Your body responds and it gets used to knowing this is the time I have my lunch, this is the time I have my dinner. And try and do that 12-hour fast. And interestingly, because I know a lot of you have just finished the fasting mimicking diet, well done everyone. Fasting mimicking diet has been shown to also help reset our circadian rhythm. So doing that on occasion, whether that's once every couple of months or once every month, can also be really helpful as well. There are some key nutrients that can also help with your circadian rhythm. So if you are struggling with sleep, there are some things that can help as well, often alongside doing the time restricted eating. And they also, some of them also help with insulin health as well. So resveratrol, alpha lipoic acid, and we will be going into these in a lot more detail. So please don't worry. This is just an intro. Now, I've mentioned a lot about estrogen, but also obviously progesterone will fall as well. When we don't ovulate, we have no corpus luteum, so we won't have progesterone. We do get some progesterone via the adrenal glands. But one thing I would say is that progesterone is commonly used to help relieve a lot of menopausal symptoms. And the studies have suggested that the synthetic progestin may not actually be very beneficial. So the natural progesterone is the one that seems to have the most benefits. But I will send a link to a breakdown of HRT and things like that as well. And then again, another really important hormone for us, and for those of you who feel really stressed, this is likely to be low, I'm afraid, and that's something called DHEA, and that's produced by our adrenal glands and in the brain as well. Levels decline in men and women, and they are particularly decreased after the menopause. And there are natural ways we can support this, which we'll go into in various of the webinars, because it can have a big impact on things like our brain health and also bone health even as well. So when we're talking about menopause, it has to be a very personalized approach. So I appreciate this is a very complicated looking sort of diagram, but for you listening, you may be much more interested in one area than someone else. And that's why I'm covering in the next few webinars different areas. Because for some people it might be that they're just fed up with feeling tired and gaining weight. For others, there may be issues with their brain or their bones or their sleep. So there are many different aspects to supporting yourself, and that's why there is no one magic supplement. There is no quick fix. So your choice of supplements, and that's why I've listed some in the nutrition plan, but your choice will be very individual. And I'm more than happy to give you guidance on what would be better for you, because there'll be some that are very important for weight loss or stress or bone health or cognition. And I've listed there some of the ones for metabolic health. I'm going to go into these in a lot more detail next weekend, so please don't worry about those. But the first week, which is very much about resetting the body, improving insulin, helping you lose that belly fat, these are the supplements that would be very useful for that as well. Obviously, you don't need all of them. And obviously, for some women, thyroid is going to be a factor as well. But I just want to quickly finish with two areas, hot flushes. Because this is something that I get asked a lot. And if you are listening and you are struggling right this minute, you will know these are not a laughing matter. They commonly are the thing that's banted around about, oh, someone's having a hot flush. But they are incredibly common. They often are more common the more stressed you are. So, often one of the areas to look at when you are struggling with hot flushes is stress response. Interestingly, although it might sound counterproductive, uh, if you are quite fit and you exercise a lot, that has actually been shown to reduce your risk of hot flushes. So, another reason for us to get exercising. Now, hot flushes are thought to be due to the fact that during the perimenopausal phase, estrogen levels are really fluctuating big time, and that affects the thermoregulatory sections in our hypothalamus, which control our body temperature. And that's why supporting hormonal levels, supporting the receptors, can be so useful, and also supporting your stress response. Now, what they've also found, and you'll notice that on some of the webinars, I'll be giving you sort of scientific references if you want to look into them. But what they found is as well that people that have a lot of inflammation in their body, their fluctuations in hormones are worse and they get more hot flushes. So if you are having an existing health condition that is not under control, whether that's a gut disorder, inflammation, blood sugar problems, high stress, fluctuations in allergens or whatever, and you've got more inflammation, you need to get that under control. And that's why adding anti-inflammatory nutrients and also fasting, time restricted eating and the fasting mimicking diet can be incredibly useful for hot flushes. So omega-3 fats, think vitamin D, think turmeric, think resveratrol. So these are the options that are often used for flushing. So there may be areas with stress support that can be very useful. Now, I appreciate not many of you are going to be able to walk into an acupuncturist, but actually the research on using acupuncture for hot flushes is really strong. Stress support, I've just posted something on some of the adaptogens that are often used generally for menopause. But stress support with rhodiola, maca, ashwagandha, and some of the others I've mentioned can be very useful, particularly red ginseng. 6 grams daily has been shown to improve stress response and help with fluctuations in temperature. Vitamin E, probably one of the strongest areas. Hops, and there's a few others that also have an estrogen-like effect. And this comes to the phytoestrogens. So phytoestrogens will bind to estrogen receptors and help to balance your estrogen levels. And we will mention these throughout every single webinar. And that's why I've included things like flaxseed and so on, and beans and pulses in the food plan. Now, they are weak compared to something like estradiol, but they do help with balancing our hormones. And some of them in particular have been used in some of the research on hot flushes and other menopausal symptoms. And I've listed a few there for you. And a caveat, just like I did with the adaptogenics, if you have an estrogen positive cancer or recovering from it, please do consult with your consultant. If you're on an aromatase inhibitor, again, do consult with your consultant. Now, if you're having a bit of flaxseed in your smoothie, that's not a problem. What I'm really referring to here is if you are taking them as a supplement. One of the most well studied is hops. Now, I don't mean go out and have a load of beer, but hops are rich in a phytoestrogen, and there have been loads of clinical trials now showing that they can help or hops helps with hot flushes, it helps with insomnia, stress, heart palpitations. It may also help with bone health, heart disease, and even breast cancer. And one of my favorite supplements, which combines hops and some Korean botanicals as well, is Estro Prime, which is Allergy Research's product. And they've actually done themselves a study on menopausal symptoms. So it's a really good one to consider. And then the other one is vitamin E, because there have been a number of studies to suggest that vitamin E can be very useful for hot flushes. And you don't need a lot. And you might find that if you're already taking a multi, it's already got 400 international units in there. but it's not a quick fix. You'll have to take this for 2 or 3 months or more, but it has also been shown to be very beneficial for long term for heart disease as well. And the other thing is, of course, just to make sure that you're snacking on things like pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, having some avocados and so on as well. So that was a quick whistle stop tour. I appreciate a lot of information there because I wanted just to do a quick overview today and really set the scene for what we're going to dig deeper into next week and the weeks after that. Next week is very much about your belly fat, muscle, and bone health. If you've got any questions about those, please post them on Facebook page. You can do that in advance. That's not a problem. And again, if you've got any questions now, post them. Chris is going to read them out. Or if you just want to say hello, post a little note or a question and we can read those out now. While Chris is looking through those and while you're posting, I'm going to put my camera on so you can actually see me. And hopefully the cat was just walking across the table. So hopefully the cat is now gone. So welcome everyone. Nice to see everyone. So I hope that was a good introduction to our menopause program. This is quite a different program than many of the others because you're such an intelligent lot that I want to go through a lot of the details and really help you specifically with any particular concerns you may have moving into the menopause or beyond. So if you've got any questions, please post them and Chris is going to read them out. So he's nodding to me to get on with it.
Well, just more, we've got lots of questions, which is great.
Great.
So currently we've got about 35 people on the webinar as well.
Welcome everyone. I'm really pleased that you're all here.
Just a few sort of questions about housekeeping, if that's okay. Start off with Christine. Can you confirm, will people get a copy of the slides and this is being recorded and be available afterwards? Can you just run through that one for everyone, please?
So just to remind you all, because I know a lot of you are new to the plan and the program and the Lean and Nourish Club. So literally, as soon as we finish today, the slides will be uploaded onto the Facebook page. So you can download those. If you go under files in the Facebook page, you'll see a range of things already there and you'll be able to access those. And then later today, when it's downloaded, I will upload it into the webinar section in your members area. So you'll see if you go into your account on christinebailey.co.uk, you can access a whole range of things that no one else can. And those webinars will be posted. So you should be able to access those today as well. So you can, watch it again and again, and you'll have a copy of the slides.
Great, fantastic, thank you. Let's get straight into questions then. The first one is from Ruth. Can you please ask Christine about the inclusion of lysine in the diet? I'm primarily vegan, sometimes vegetarian.
Yeah.
So I'm presumably what Ruth was referring to in there, is it difficult to get that into the diet if you're a vegan?
So lysine, which is an amino acid, you can get it in a vegan diet. That's not a problem. However, a bit like, methionine, there are certain foods that are richer in some of these than others. One of the things that I encourage you to do if you are not intolerant is to include tempeh and tofu or edamame beans, which are in the plan, because they are a complete source of protein and will contain plenty of lysine. I don't know, are you suffering from cold sores or anything? And that's why you're interested particularly in lysine. But if you include a range of beans and pulses, and we are including some starchy veg and some grains later on in the plan, like the brown rice and quinoa and so on, then you'll be able to get the combined amino acids. I also recommend the pea protein powder, which is actually a good source of lysine as well as the others amino acids. And also from a muscle health point of view, contains a relatively high level of leucine. And leucine is also very useful for muscle mass. And that becomes particularly important as we age. So hopefully that helps.
Great, fantastic, thank you. Question from Alison. This is going back to sort of fat movement, not so much loss.
Yes.
It says, how do we stop fat loss on our buttons?
Yeah, you can't actually stop it, I'm afraid, apart from, surgery, Botoxy type things. But what you can do is squats. So the best or resistant band work. So it is a natural process, including more phytoestrogens in your diet, very useful anyway, because that's going to help with the balancing of the estrogen levels of phytoestrogens, because it's the reduction in the estradiol that is causing that shift. And then, to be honest, squats. Squat with heavy weights, and if you don't have, actual, bars or dumbbells, you can buy very cheaply resistance bands and squat using those around your sort of upper thighs. And I think Juliet, who is part of the Lean and Nourish Club, who's also a fitness trainer, always good to have. If you search in the Lean and Nourish Club under discussions, resistance bands, she's posted previously some good ones that you can get from Amazon. But that, unfortunately, is the best way, unfortunately, to keep your butt.
Great. Question from Mandy. She says, what are genetic SNPs?
Yeah, oh, good question. Sorry. So genetic SNPs are like typos. So we inherit from our parents, so our mother and our father, our genetic makeup, and each enzyme in our body can have variations in how it functions, and we inherit those from our parents, and they're called little typos. And we will either have the common variety, i.e. the one that doesn't really impact the enzyme function that well. And enzymes are very much encoding genes. So our enzymes are very much involved with gene expression. So, switching things on and off in our body. They're called single nucleotide polymorphisms. That's what SNPs are. That's what SNP means. And so we inherit these. So to give you an example, there is a SNP which is called MTHFR, and it's very much involved with how we utilize folate, as in folic acid, but folate from greens, foliage, which is a B vitamin effectively. And that's really important for various pathways in our body that are involved in mood, memory, focus, concentration, happiness, and also estrogen detoxification. So if we inherit variations in those that mean they don't function as well, which is very common, in fact 50% of the population will have one variation in that MTHFR, then it means that it can affect how well we can methylate, detoxify estrogen, think, have serotonin, feel good. And so some people inherently struggle more with, say, certain detoxification of toxins or hormones, or find that their glass is always looking half empty than half full. They have a disposition which is a little bit low in mood. Now, the good thing is that these variations can be modified by the diet and the lifestyle that we live. So we can enhance their function very easily with the right foods and the right nutrients in the right form. And maybe I need to do a whole webinar on SNPs. I'm more than happy to do that. But if anyone, and there's quite a few of you that have done things like the 23andMe, that will give you a list of all your variations that you have. And if you have that and you haven't already emailed me them, I can put them through a little program which will flag up the key areas and the key nutrients that you might need to help your body further. So hopefully that helps.
Great, fantastic, thank you. So I'm just looking ahead, just anticipating questions coming up and see if any are linked. Uh, sorry, let me just go back. We've got loads of questions, which is
That's fine. That's
fantastic.
fine. We love questions.
Great. So it's a question from Elizabeth, and it is personal to her. How does a low-carb diet, as you're recommending for the first stage of the plan, affect people such as myself who are hypo a thyroid? Yeah.
Very good question. So, Elizabeth, so I presume you're on thyroxine or something similar to keep your thyroid balanced. It is only 1 week of not very low carb, but low carb. So that period of time is unlikely to adversely affect your thyroid function. What I would say is that you need to ensure, I mean, please feel free to email me. You need to ensure that your medication is doing its job, because I tell you something, the number of people that send me their thyroid results and it's not optimal. And often it just means that you might need a little bit of the cofactors to help with the T4 to T3 conversion, so like selenium, iodine, zinc, and so on. But 1 week is not going to adversely affect that thyroid function. However, what I would say is that for you, I would not recommend that you do a ketogenic diet long term. This is not a ketogenic diet, but I certainly wouldn't recommend someone with hypothyroid should do a ketogenic diet. But you know, the 1 week of relatively low carb is not going to adversely affect you, and then we gradually increase the carbs as well.
Right. Just jumping back to Ruth's question about lysine. The reason you asked the question is because that she's getting cold sores at the moment.
Oh, right. Yeah. So in which case, what I would say is, if you are getting cold sores, I would probably take some lysine anyway. One of the other things there's a couple of things that I find really useful for cold sores generally. Up your B vitamins generally, full stop. Just make sure you're getting enough B vitamins. As you know, if you're vegan, you know, B12 can often take a dive even if you're taking a multi. So, but I would absolutely take a B vitamin. I would also take liposomal vitamin C. I have seen so many clients really benefit from cold sores by taking at least a gram of liposomal vitamin C or even more, and then maybe consider some lysine as well.
Right. And just on the SNPs, lots of feedback on that. A webinar on the genetic SNPs would go on really well.
Yeah, bring it on.
Just one more question. Where's the best place to get tests for that?
I would do 23andMe because it's cheap. And although they are testing, and I'm going to be honest about this, and this is one thing that I would talk about in a webinar, is you only select SNPs that are researched, have a health significance, and you can do something about. Now, unfortunately, 23andMe just do a whole load of stuff. And if you then started Googling them all, you'd start getting really paranoid. But a lot of them haven't been validated. But then you can email me the text file. I can then put it through a program, and it will flag up all the key areas that might need support that have been researched. And I think, because I've just ordered it for Chris, I think it's about, and I know Preeti, you've ordered it as well, I think it's about £100 at the moment, which is a lot cheaper than a lot of the others. And the nice thing is you can do it at home because it's just a sort of saliva, you know, buccal swab. And then you post it off and you'll get emailed a text file.
Right. Question from Karen. This is on maca powder.
Yeah.
Can you use maca powder if you have a goitre and on
goitrogen,
goitrogen and on HRT?
So maca, there's a lot of debate about if you've got a thyroid issue and you've got a goiter, can you use maca? Yes, you can. I mean, the Peruvians use maca as a vegetable on a daily basis. They feed it to their children in stews and soups on a daily basis. There is very little evidence that, you know, if you took a spoonful in, I don't know, a smoothie, that is going to make it worse. However, you do need to make sure you are iodine sufficient. And that is one of the benefits of chucking in a load of clear spring sea vegetables, you know, sort of seaweed effectively. You don't want to go mad, and I don't recommend you start downing kelp tablets. That's not a good idea. But, including in soups and salads and stews, a handful of sea vegetables. And the reason I say clear spring is they're organic. And the last thing you want to do is be taking sea vegetables that are not organic, because one of the benefits of using sea vegetables or seaweed is that they're chelators. So they can help our bodies eliminate things like heavy metals. But obviously, if they're growing in the general sea, they'll also absorb toxins. So you need to know the source. So make sure your iodine's sufficient. And yes, it's safe on HRT, and it's safe if you've got a thyroid issue.
Great. Lots of questions and comments about internal clocks. And a couple of questions that's come up a couple of times. Would a sad light be helpful for internal clocks?
Yeah. I mean, they are expensive, which is partly why I didn't mention them. But the bright lights that you can get, that gradually wake you up in the morning, some people will actually use them throughout the day when they're working, particularly like this. And I also recommend, if you've got a mobile phone, get a lux meter. You can get these, on the App Store, you can download a free lux meter. And what this does is it measures the light exposure that you have wherever you are in your house. You should choose a place to work where you have maximum lux exposure. I was playing around with, the house and just finding out where the best place is to work, because the more you can get light exposure, the better during the day. The other thing you might want to consider on the converse is the UVEX red glasses, which block out the blue light, which can stimulate you in the evening and block melatonin. Again, they're not the cheapest of things. You can get them on Amazon. But again, those two scenarios are really useful to do.
Great. Carol's just picking up on Alison's comment about being hypothyroid and low carb diets.
Yeah.
I think more the fact she's got slow running thyroid. And what's the best thing to do to help boost hormones would be welcome during with that.
Carol, do you mean thyroid hormones? So what I would do is, if you could email me your latest thyroid result, and for those of you who don't know, you could easily test yourself via Medichecks online, who send out these blood tests that you can do at home. So there's sort of finger prick, dry spot blood test most of the time. They also have these little vials you can do as well. And that's a really good way of checking your thyroid. And then if you email me what they are, I can let you know what the best things would be, because you can either be primary hypothyroid or secondary. And the difference is it affecting the brain? Sorry to touch my head, but is it the brain signaling to your thyroid that's a problem? Or is it actually the thyroid just, not functioning appropriately? So you've got a primary, you've got a secondary thyroid issue, or the other way around actually. And for some people, their T4 is great, but their T3 is not. So depending on what area is affected, and also stress. So high cortisol, when you're really stressed, can block T4 to T3. So sometimes things like ashwagandha can be useful, but not always for everyone. Because it depends on which type of thyroid issue you've got. So probably best drop me something on Facebook or email me, Carol.
Cool. Going back to circadian clocks.
Yes.
In the question from Natasha, how much exposure in sunlight, length of time is helpful?
Yeah.
She used to go out into the garden and do some exercise first thing. Hard when it's cold, fair enough. But might try and see if it helps again. See what happens.
So the recommendation is, there is no recommendation, as in the more light during the day, particularly the morning, you can have outside, the better. So I know that's not feasible, and it's absolutely freezing, but minimum of 30 minutes. But some of the researchers are saying 1 to 2 hours. I mean, the more. So what some people are now doing is, they go out first thing in the morning, and then they'll start working, and then they'll have a break at 11 or 12, go out again, even if it's just for a 20-minute walk. the time you don't want all the light exposure is sort of late afternoon onwards. That's when you need to start calming it down, and that includes all the electronic lights as well.
Great. Question from Karina. She's starting the menopause diet tomorrow.
Great.
Can she use the awesome Subs of vegan protein powder? Ingredients are pea protein isolate, cocoa powder, brown rice protein, caramel flavouring, salt, and sucralose.
Yeah, sounds great to me. I mean, sucralose is a sweetener, but it will be relatively low level, so I wouldn't worry about it. If it tastes good and you like using it, that's important, because some of them, quite frankly, taste awful. There's a whole range that a lot of people have mentioned on the Facebook page that they like, and everyone's personal, but that sounds fine to me.
Right. Sandra wants to know if it's true that a tablespoon of ground flax seeds in some water first thing in the morning helps with estrogen when estrogen is falling.
Yeah, I mean, flaxseed generally will help. It's phytoestrogenic, and we'll talk more about the foods in particular during the cookery demo. And one of the things I'm going to demonstrate to you is how to make your own flaxseed crackers, whether you've got a dehydrator or an oven. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, flax seeds are great for a lot of reasons. But one thing I would say is a lot of the studies about flaxseed, and this is true of some of the other phytoestrogenic foods, is they do rely on a good gut flora, because what actually really happens is when you break down the flaxseed and some of the other foods like soya and so on, your gut flora has to convert them into the active components. So if you've got IBS, gut imbalances, your gut's not that great, take a probiotic, because you'll get most benefit that way.
Okay. Dashi says she loves Dr. Stewart's Valerian tea at night. I think it's got magnesium, cherry. Helpful.
Yeah. I know Dr. Stewart very well. So, I mean, anything like valerian, chamomile, cherry active juice, we've got a lot of fans of cherry active here, lemon balm, passion flower, all of these can be really, really good. And, you can take them as teas, they're available as tinctures, they're available as supplements as well, but they're all really very good. L-theanine is another one. If you're quite sort of wound up, and L-theanine is quite good during the day anyway, because it helps with focus and concentration. That's another one because it taps into GABA, which is a neurotransmitter that just calms us down. I use it a lot for my boys. They don't know, but I use it quite a lot.
Cool. Right, thank you. Question from Alison. Are you able to supplement for DHEA or ask the GP for a prescription? If so, is it worth checking levels pre and post any supplements?
Right, so you've got to be very careful about hormonal supplementation for a start. And the reason I say that is I've actually had a number of women come to my clinic because they were taking hormones. Now, I'm not anti-hormones at all, and we will talk about hormones because for the brain, there is some real benefit. But if you start ordering DHA online, you could shunt out all the other hormones. You could end up with quite a lot of testosterone, etc., etc. So you really need to know what you're doing. So you need to get them tested first, absolutely. You should see a doctor, ideally a functional doctor, and if they're very low, and there's certainly merit to be taking them. Now, however, one backdoor way of supporting DHEA without the adverse effects of high testosterone is something called 7-ketozyme. I can write it down, I'll send you the link. It's by Bartik's research. It is very safe. It is perfectly suitable for use, even if you don't know your DHEA level. I would prefer people do know their level. But say you feel, I don't know your age, but also you're quite stressed, you're low in energy, you're worried about your bones or whatever, then you might want to try 7-ketozyme because that will not convert to testosterone. So you're not going to knock out testosterone. But one of the other keys with DHEA is overall stress support. And that's where I would say things like rhodiola, ginseng, probably also a little bit of ashwagandha, but I'd say rhodiola, ginseng would be really useful as well to give you more resilience, because DHEA is an adrenal based hormone. And so the more you support the stress hormones, the better.
Okay. Frida wants to know where natural progesterone comes from. Is it animal? Is it animal? Does it come from animals? She just wants to know. She's asking for the vegetarians, vegans amongst us.
It's a very good point. I don't know the actual source, to be honest. I mean, that would be one more for Preeti or Shilpa, who are on the Facebook page. And I can also ask a couple of the doctors that I work with just to find out the exact source. Obviously, you have to have that prescribed. I'll see if I can get someone else on the Facebook page who is a doctor to help. Or I've also got a very good summary of all of this, where I'll send the link, because that may well have the information on there as well.
Great, thank you. Adashi's asked a question. I'm not too sure what it's in relation to, Adashi. She says impact on celiacs, but I presume that's relating to an earlier question.
Okay.
If you could come back and let us know, then I'll pick that up towards the end.
Yeah,
Great.
okay.
Okay, question from Alison. What brand or dosage of resveratrol, that's it, would you recommend?
Chris trying to get his hand around it. Well, okay, so it might be a good idea if I just send you a couple of links, because it's not a cheap supplement. That's the reason I'm hesitating, because I love it. I'm not taking it at the moment. I would like to, it's just quite pricey. Biotics Research have a really good one. But the reason I'm sort of hesitating is because one of the other ways that we can support the antioxidant, the mimic side of things, is maybe to think about tapping into the NRF2, which is a sort of antioxidant switch that we all have. And so there's another supplement that also contains that as well. And in some cases, it's quite a good idea to get a multi-antioxidant formula, because then you get multiple benefits than just resveratrol. Depends on why you want to take the resveratrol. If it's for the sort of fasting mimic, then it might be best to take the Biotics one. And I would say you only really need one of those days. It's about 100, I think it's about 100 milligrams. But it's not the cheapest supplement. You know, it's well known in the anti-aging field. It's just unfortunate it's not the cheapest.
Cool. Question from Mandy. She's been listening to one of your other webinars about COVID and was just was asking about the anti-inflammatory supplements such as turmeric and whether taking how much is too much in terms of being counterproductive for COVID. Yeah,
so it really depends on whether you've got COVID or you're using it as a precaution, protection, because as you know, if you're on the throes of COVID, as in an infection, and you've got the cytokine storm, then you know there are certain supplements that have question marks on them, a bit like the vitamin D, you know, excess and so on. Does it affect the receptor sites? But you know, if you're just using it as a general anti-inflammatory, it's absolutely fine to take. Now, depending on why you want to take it, and also the form, the dose will be very independent. So to give you an example, a very high dose is used in Crohn's and colitis, particularly ulcerative colitis. The studies have actually shown about 2 grams a day, which is a lot, is very beneficial. Now, you wouldn't need that if you're just using it, say, for, you know, general joint health or whatever. And again, you might want to choose something like Kappa Rest, which is a multiple nutrient formula for inflammation. And it has things like boswellia in there and green tea extract and so on. So really good for things like joint pain and general systemic inflammation. And And I would always, unless you would either use something like the Capares or use an emulsified formula of curcumin, and it's curcumin that's the most active component. But that would be absolutely safe unless you're suddenly in the throes of, an inflammatory storm, in which case you're actually probably in hospital.
Great. I think this must be in relation to the diet, but what can you exchange for beans if you have problems with lectins?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I am including beans and pulses, and interestingly, I have just uploaded the event date for our lectin talk because lectins can be an issue for some people. But beans and pulses do have a lot of benefits because they are plant-based, vegan, phytoestrogenic, good source of prebiotic fiber, blah blah blah. And obviously, they're a good vegan source. So if you are not vegan, you can just replace them for the meat version. So that could be the chicken, the fish, the eggs, etc. If you can cope with fermented soya, and the fermentation does reduce the lectin content, then I would go for tempeh, for example. The other thing that is slightly lower are the split lentils. So lentils tend to be easier than, say, kidney beans, for example. So those would be the options.
Okay. Question from Karen, and again, I'm not too sure the context on this. She's just said, what about omega-7 sea blackthorn juice?
Yeah,
Is that an alternative?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so buckthorn is, at the moment, it's being used or studied quite a lot for vaginal dryness, for example. And you can buy it as a juice, you can buy it as a capsule. Most of the studies have actually been done on the oil rather than juice. So yes, you can buy it. It's not Indigo Herbs, but there's another brand that sell it as a juice. I would say if you're using it for things, or you want it for either skin or vaginal dryness, I would use the oil, and I would just get a pure sea buckthorn oil rather than trying to get a combined formula, because the amount you need is normally a bit higher. Natural dispensaries sell quite a few brands, and they're very, very good.
Claire Roberts just posted a comment. She's a reflexologist.
Yay.
She's had some really good results with customers suffering from hot flushes. So
wouldn't be surprised at all, Claire. Wouldn't be surprised. The research is very strong on the pressure points and so on. And, my cousin, who is also a doctor, is also a trained acupuncturist. And that's one of the most common areas that she will be supporting is hot flushes. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Right. Dash is quite keen to understand if you need to adapt the diet, will you give advice? She's got issues with oats and maca, etc.
Yeah,
so just contact you directly.
Yeah, contact me directly. I mean, oats are an easy one to change because, what a lot of people will do is they will just say, right, well, I can't do that recipe, so I'll have this alternative breakfast instead. Others, if they can cope with grains, you can get things like the quinoa flakes, the buckwheat flakes, the rice flakes, which you can use in some of the granolas and porridges and so on as well. But yeah, if you've got any queries like that, just post it on the Facebook page, because we all have different foods that either we don't like or we can't tolerate. Obviously, it is gluten-free, but not all celiacs can cope with oats, as in gluten-free oats. And I appreciate that. So, either think about what other recipes you do like that you could use instead, or just, message me and I can give you some alternatives.
Right. Natasha said she's got some questions about the plan.
Yeah.
Let me sort of go through these one by one, because I think they're relatively quick.
Sure.
What is a low-carb syrup?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So low-carb syrups. So you can get a range of these. They're normally sweetened by stevia. There are some healthier ones and some slightly not healthier ones. I was sent a load recently. People like, there is a good one on Amazon that I used to have, and I can send you details. Most of the good ones are stevia based, and they just mean that they're quite useful for this first week. so they're not raising your blood glucose and the overall carb intake. So let me, if I don't remember, just message me on the Facebook page and I'll post you the one that I was using that I thought was a good brand.
Great. What constitutes a side salad and how much?
Yeah, good question. So side salad, what I mean by side salad, and I'm not really worried about your portion size, but what it really is just leafy greens and maybe some cucumber. So what I don't mean is a massive salad of things like carrots, sweet corn, beetroot, and so on, in addition to the salad, as in the lettuce. So you could just get a bag of mixed lettuce leaves and some cucumber, and that would be a side salad. The reason I'm saying that is, and I'm not worried about your size because it's not going to have a lot of calories, but it fills you up, which is fantastic. But the more you start adding other ingredients, the more the calories go up. And if we're doing that first week to help reset insulin and or lose a little bit of weight, then that is going to be important.
What steamed veg are optimal? Are we talking greens, or can we include carrots, sweet corn, beetroot, etc.?
Yeah. So cruciferous vegetables are one of your women's best sources to help us through any period in our life, actually. So what I mean by that is broccoli, cauliflower, pak choy, spinach, watercress, kale, all those cabbage, all those lovely cruciferous vegetables. If you can get those in on a daily basis in some form, brilliant. That could just be a handful of spinach in the smoothie. But I mean, a lot of the soups, for example, we're utilising those anyway. Green beans are a good one. Courgettes are good in the sense that they're lower carb. The starchier ones are fine, but just remember they are higher in carbs. So carrots would be higher in carbs, as would beetroot, as would sweet corn. So a lot of the greens, red peppers, aubergines would be another source. Not everyone can have the nightshade family. Onions, obviously, are very low carb. Mushrooms are very low carb. So it partly depends on which part of the plan you're thinking about. But I would try and go for, in the first week, more of the cruciferous vegetables generally. I mean, in a way, the more variety you can get, the better. Obviously, online shopping dependent. But definitely the leafy greens. And then in the first week, try and go for all those leafy greens, but also things like the green beans, the courgettes, and so on, which are very low carb.
Carol says, with regards to sleep, can you advise, and again, regards to 5-HTPP, in what dosage and way to regulate the circadian rhythm?
Circadian rhythm, I mean, we are going to do a whole webinar on the circadian rhythm in, I think it's February. It's on under the events. So I will be talking about that. I would also say go into the blogs on sleep because there is a download as well on all of this. For a lot of people, now remember 5-HTP, precursor for tryptophan serotonin. So if you're on an SSRI, you must not take 5-HTP. It's not for everyone. And not everyone finds it useful. So 5-HTP is also very good for cravings and appetite, which is why it was listed on one of the slides more because of sort of, the appetite cravings type of thing. So some people will take it during the day for cravings and for appetite. But, anything from 50 milligrams to 150, probably about 2 hours before bed is the right source. But I would almost try something like magnesium glycinate first, because for a lot of people, it's that calming effect that magnesium has that is most beneficial. And the more stress you are under, the more you deplete magnesium. So I would probably choose magnesium glycinate first before moving on to 5-HTP.
Right. Any thoughts on frozen shoulder support in the session next week? One person just writing in here, they understand there's a link between perimenopause due to hormone changes.
Yeah, unfortunately, joint issues are a big one generally because as estrogen declines, not only does inflammation often go up, but the way collagen forms and connective tissue helps and heals can be affected. So anti-inflammatories are going to be your best choice, particularly MSM, sulfur. So MSM is a natural form of sulfur found in a lot of vegetables, but we just don't get enough. But it's an integral part of connective tissue. So for joint support, a lot of people find MSM really useful as they do collagen as well. And for some people, using these sort of TENS machines can be really, really beneficial as a sort of, physical way of helping. But certainly the anti-inflammatories, the collagen. Some people, not so much for frozen shoulder, more for sort of more knee issues. Hyaluronic acid as a supplement can be useful. In fact, in the States, what they do is they inject the fluid around the knee with hyaluronic acid as one of the best ways of helping to just support the tissue structure, because again, that's what it's made out of. So I would be tempted to try some MSM and maybe some collagen as well, and the TENS machines.
Great. Elizabeth's got a question. She's got high levels of stress, hypothyroid, perimenopausal help. Where to start?
Oh, my love. So you need to sort the thyroid out, without a doubt. That's a really important one. So please get it tested. Make sure, because I know, a doctor might say, oh, it's tested 6 months ago, it's fine. It may not be fine now, particularly if you're very stressed. It may have blipped. And when your estrogen starts to go, which it will around the perimenopause, and it's fluctuating, that will have a massive impact on your thyroid. So please get that checked first, because I think if that's out, we need to sort that out first. Then I would say, depending on your symptoms of perimenopause, it might be a good idea to think about a stress support and maybe choose an adaptogen. Now, would it be useful if I posted a few of my faves? Because I don't get any money with any of these supplements, by the way, I just want to make it clear. But these are the ones that I would use with my clients that they get the most benefit from. So maybe if I post a few, I'll do it later today. That's what I would choose. But thyroid first, stress, and then if there's a particular area in the perimenopausal symptoms, then let me know and I can suggest something. But that's the order you should go for. And sleep will tap into the stress.
Great. I think Christine now has got a comment which refers back to your joint comment you made earlier. Because she said, so that's the reason my hands, thumb joints are more painful lately. She's 58 and just start bleeding after having a D&C.
Oh, lovely.
Recommended by she's got GYNE, I don't know if that's GP or gene, because of heavy bleeding. Otherwise, I feel generally great, just the joint pain. I already have arthritis in my shoulder, but that doesn't seem to hurt.
That was my question, is do you suspect this is actually the start of rheumatoid arthritis? And do you have a gut issue? Because the area of research into joint pain and inflammation getting worse, particularly if it's rheumatoid, which, as you know, is autoimmune. So it's an autoimmune condition. There is a big connection between your gut. So we know that there are various bacteria called Proteus species and others, it's not just Proteus, that will trigger an inflammatory response and contribute to rheumatoid arthritis. So Professor E. Bringer in London, I think he is still, has published a whole load of research on this. And by sorting the gut out, you can lower the inflammation and help with the pain. So the small joint pain gives me more concern that it could be the start of rheumatoid. Check your vitamin D status as well. You need to get that right up.
Bridgine, sorry, apologies for that. She says she's really interested in supplements to support stress and hormonal imbalance in perimenopause. They just feel extreme just now. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe what I'll do is this evening is post a little summary of some of the key supplements that would be useful for some of these key areas. I think that might be useful for people. And you know, if there's anything in particular, the more information, if you don't mind, that you can give me about your individual health, the better, so that you can choose the right one that's going to benefit you. Because I appreciate supplements are not cheap, you know, but you know, we want to get the right one to do the job. With stress, I'll be honest with you, do not expect miracles in a week. You need to take a supplement, I would say 3 or 4 weeks, to really notice whether or not it's going to help you. And the reason I say it's very individual is because some people will be very stressed all the time, as in stressed and wired like this. Others will be stressed and tired. And what will help one individual may not help the other. But I can certainly give you some really good suggestions of adaptogenics that can be very useful.
Right. Laura just confirmed that medical acupuncturists are classified as essentials. They are open now, and they all follow PPE, etc. So you referred to that earlier.
Yeah. And I know Carolyn, my cousin, you know, she's not nearby, but you know, she's working on the front line at the moment as well. But you know, she's been working all the way through. But yeah. So that's good news. So it's definitely worth trying.
Great. Ruth's just a follow-on question from one that she asked earlier, but specifically, she wants to know, where would I get the pea protein powder from, and can you recommend a good one?
Yeah, so I mean, to be honest, Amazon is probably your cheapest bet. Pulsin, very, very good. They do a really good chocolate pea protein powder. The other brand that's very good in terms of combinations, and they have some superfoods, so they have one with macaron, for example, is Nuzest, which is an Australian-based company, Nuzest. Very, very good. They're called Clean Lean Protein. Natural Dispensary online also sell them. If you've got any problems getting anything from Natural Dispensary, you just mention my name and you can order anything. But either Amazon or Natural Dispensary for those. Very, very good. If you want a pea protein that also has vitamins and minerals added to it, then I would go for Biotics Research, and it's called Nutri 150. And it's an all singing, dancing vitamin and mineral formula in a powder form, and it's pea based. And that's a really good way of, you know, just getting bits and minerals in. But if you're thinking I might have 2 or 3 protein shakes, or at least 2 a day, then you might want to just get a plain one that doesn't have all the bits and minerals in as well.
Okay. I covered that one. Oh, talk about SNPs.
And thank you for bearing with me, because I appreciate there's a lot of questions here.
Great. Any supplements not okay to take on HRT?
Yeah, so you don't want to be taking any hormonal glandulars at all when you're on HRT. I wouldn't be taking black cohosh if I was on HRT. So you need to just be mindful of any that have very strong estrogenic effects, because effectively, when you're on HRT, you're replacing hormones. So you know, you don't want something that's very strong like black cohosh, for example, and there's various glandulars that could affect you. I'd be wary about other hormones like DHEA as well. One thing I would say, and I do recommend this for all my women on HRT, regardless of their family or health history, take DIM, which is D-indolmethane. It's an extract of cruciferous vegetables, and what it does is it helps the natural, healthy detoxification of estrogen. So that because you're taking some estrogen, we still have to detoxify that. And what we want to be able to do is detoxify that to a form that is less pro-cancer forming. And that's what DIM does. It shunts it to the more beneficial metabolites of estrogen. So take DIM. You don't take it necessarily when you are taking your HRT, which is normally first thing in the morning, but take DIM during the day. Just take 1 or 2 a day. Good brand, Allergy Research, really good brand. But yeah, definitely take that.
Great. What is the best gut biotic to use?
Oh, that's a long question because it will depend on the individual. But if you want a general good formula, there is a couple of companies that have designed one for women. And one of them is Allergy Research. They have it's called Biotics for Women, pretty obvious. Again, you can get that from Nutrilink, so Biotics Women, or it's called Essential Biotics Women, I think. And then there's another company which very much specialise in probiotics, particularly women, vaginal health, and so on. And that's a company called In Vivo. They are available through Natural Dispensary, and they have a Fem one. Again, very much. And the reason is our beneficial bacteria is different from men. Particularly around the vagina, we have a different range of bacteria, obviously. And so those formulas have been designed to include those.
Okay. Mandy says she makes her own kombucha and sauerkraut. So it's easy, really good for the tummy, etc.
Yeah.
Just recommended that.
Yeah, Mandy, you missed it because you weren't part of the group, unfortunately. Glad you are now. We actually ran a whole cookery day on fermented foods. And you should be able to access the handout that we created for that. So that is available for everyone, how to make your own. Definitely recommend it.
Cool. Question from Jill. Any suggestions for Rio? You'll have to.
Sorry, I've got to just look at Chris's screen.
Sorry.
Oh, rhodiola.
Rhodiola and ginseng.
So rhodiola, again, pure encapsulations, brilliant brand. What I like about them is there's no additives, no fillers, nothing. So you can either get those from Natural Dispensary. You may be able to get some of them from Amazon as well. So pure encapsulations, best company for those sort of adaptogenic herbs.
Mandy says, any recommendations for a 55-year-old vegan? She's a liver cancer survivor, very low sex drive, no periods for 2 years, but still suffering from hot flushes.
Okay, so vegan. So, I mean, Mandy, because you exercise quite a lot, I'm sure you're getting sufficient protein. One of the things with the sort of regulation of the thermoregulatory center, of course, is the hypothalamus. So anything that helps the hypothalamus can help with the hot flushes as well. So you may want to consider something like the ashwagandha, for example, rhodiola. Those are very useful. Plus, I would also suggest to look at your vitamin E levels because vitamin E, the 400 IUs even a day, has been shown to be very useful for hot flushes. So maybe try a combination of adrenal support for the hypothalamus and also 400 IUs. I mean, because you are vegan, you will be getting quite a lot of phytoestrogens. So the flaxseed, the tempeh, definitely recommend. So try and include those as well. So everyone, I've just seen another question come up, dosage of DIM. So with Allergies Research, I would take 1 twice a day. I will put that in on the Facebook page. So listen, everyone, I appreciate it's 3 o'clock. Thank you very much for your time. What I will suggest I do is I'll upload the slides straight away, get the webinar uploaded into your members area, and then start with some of the specific questions on supplements. Anything that you think I've missed or any questions I've missed, just post on the Facebook page and I will answer you. So thank you, everyone, and I'll see you all soon.